Back to the Zoom. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. Yossi, Rav Label, Rav Moshe, of course, everyone here, Rabbi Karb, Mike, Mr. Minsky, Rav Shmuel, Renedich, good morning. Okay, we are here in the Gemara in Mesechta, Megillah, Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, 16a, and it will be in the Art Scroll 16a1. Top line of the page on Daf Tes Zayin. We're discussing how the king could not sleep. He was suffering from insomnia, but more from anxiety. He was wondering what's going on. What's type of plots and conspiracies are going on between Esther and Haman? And so he said, perhaps there's somebody which I did not adequately reward for helping me. That was a system. He would reward everybody who would say good things about him, say good things to him, inform others. Maybe I did not reward somebody adequately. So he called his scribe Shimshi, who was a scribe by him and by Koresh, and it says he was one of the many sons of Haman, and he opened it up, and he opened to the page speaking about how Mordechai saved the king's life, and he tried turning the page. The page always went back to that story. So Shimshi tried erasing the words in order that he shouldn't have to read it. And it says, Gavriel, the angel, came and wrote down everything that Shimshi was erasing. Based on this, that the angel Gavriel was writing down whatever Shimshi, the scribe, was erasing. He was trying to erase the story of how Mordechai saved the king and all the details. He's trying to downplay it. Amar Rabbi Asi, top line of the page, says Rabbi Asi, Darash Rav Shela Ish Kfar Tamarta. Rav Shela, the man of the village of Timarta, it's in northern Israel, said, Umak Sav Shelamata, Shelaschusun Shel Yisrael Einin Nimchak. Just think to yourself, the writing in the king's chronicles, in the king's writings in this physical world, and there was something there written good for the Jews, how Mordechai saved the king's life. And this writing could not be erased. Even though it was being erased by Shimshi, the angel Gavriel was writing it down once again. So the anti-Semites can never erase the good history. There's a famous line, anti-Semites want to get rid of the Jews, say no problem, we'll get rid of every vaccine, all the polio vaccines, because that was made by a Jew, get rid of 100 other inventions and medical inventions and financial, they're all made by Jews. So the good that a Jew does in this world can never be erased. Like the story of Mordechai, he saved the king's life, and even though Shimshi was trying to erase it, the angel would not let it be erased. Ksav Shelamayla. So whatever is written positive about the Jews in heaven, the mitzvahs that a Jew does, the good deeds that a Jew does is written in everything. Hakol nichtav, everything is written. Hakol kasuv b'sefer nichtavim, it says in Pirkei Avos. Everything is written above the ledger with all of our deeds. So if you do a mitzvah, and Gavriel is constantly, the angel is constantly in Shemayim, constantly in heaven. So he is always watching to make sure that it does not get erased. L'kol shekain. So definitely, the good deeds of a Jew will never get erased. So in Shemayim, in heaven, whatever you do a mitzvah, whenever you do something good, will be kept forever. So there's no good deed goes unrewarded. So whatever a person does a mitzvah, he will get rewarded for it. Hashem will pay him for it. And if Hashem promises something good, it says Hashem will not go back on the promise, even if the people are undeserving. Sam Sofer, or Moshe Sofer, He's from the times of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe. He has a whole famous, the Rav of Pressburg. He fought against the Haskalah, the Enlightenment, and the Reform movement. So Chassam Sofer, he has actually a very interesting diary of what happened when Napoleon invaded Pressburg. So the Chassam Sofer, on his drashas and his sermons that he gave on Purim, so he explains a deeper meaning behind this verse. It says, the Anshe Knesset Agdola, the men of the Great Assembly, the members of Sanhedrin, all 71 of them from the times, or all 120 of them from the times of destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash, survived all 70 years of the destruction of the Churban, and were there at the dedication of the second Beis HaMikdash. I mean, they all lived extraordinary long lives. If they were a member of the Anshe Knesset Agdola of Sanhedrin, at the end of the first Beis HaMikdash, they lived extremely long. Mordechai, Ezra, Zechariah, Malachi, Chagai, Daniel, great people. Now, they must have been, they were great tzaddikim, holy people. Otherwise, Hashem would not have made them live that long. And they are the basis of the entire Torah Shabbat Pev, the entire oral Torah. It does not make sense that they would have been people who would have been bowing down to the idol during the times of Nebuchadnezzar, or Nenu having benefit, enjoying the feast of Achasverosh. So they were not guilty. Why should they be punished? Why should they be killed if they never did anything wrong? So Chassam Sofer said there's different categories of tzaddikim. It was called a tzaddik elyon and a tzaddik tachton, a supernal, a higher tzaddik, and a lower tzaddik. You have a higher tzaddik, a tzaddik who's far beyond anything to do with this physical world. You know, sometimes you could ask advice from two different type of people. You want to ask advice sometimes from a mashpia who is, it says, someone who's similar to Hashem, a holy person, a person who has nothing to do, who's so totally separated from the world. Sometimes in business matters, you have to ask advice from somebody which understands the business world, understands the medical world. That's called a tzaddik tachton, a lower level tzaddik. It's Chassidus brings the distinction between Yosef and his brothers. The brothers of Yosef, the 11 brothers, they were all tzaddikei elyon. They were shepherds, stayed away from people. Even in Egypt, they had to go to the land of Goshen. They had to have a Beis Medrash, learn Torah. A tzaddik tachton, Yosef, he was so great that he could be involved in running a country and dealing with the lowly Egyptians, be cut off for decades from anything Jewish, and still be a great tzaddik. That was Yosef. So the Anshe Knesset Agdola, they were all great tzaddikim, but they were tzaddikei elyon. It's tzaddikim which were so great, it says that their schus, their merits, will not be connected, will be too great to be counted as a reward for the Jews. Meaning there wouldn't be a physical reward for their mitzvahs. The mitzvahs were so spiritual that there was no physical reward for them. And so this is what he says over here in the Gemara, that in heaven, a schus, something positive about a Jew will never be erased. Because in heaven, the mitzvahs of tzaddikim last forever. In order for there to be a physical reward, they had to come down a little bit. And how did they be able to be relatable to the world? So they found in the King's Chronicles how Mordechai saved the king's life. So Achasverosh was a king, was an evil king, a wicked king. So he was a type of king which says, there's no, if you see him dying, it wouldn't be an obligation to save someone's life like that. And so Mordechai saved his life, even though Mordechai, had in mind for a mitzvah. But nevertheless, since he saved his life, he had a connection to this world. So this is what it means. If even down here, a mitzvah never gets erased, a schus, a merit which someone has, even if it doesn't deserve that this mitzvah should be rewarded in this world, so for sure, in the world to come, a mitzvah will be there forever and ever. So this is how Chaim Sofer explains this Gemara over here. Let's continue the Gemara. Back to the Megillah. So they found written in the Chronicles that Mordechai told the king about Bigsan and Seresh, two chamberlains of the king who were guards in the king's threshold. They wanted to kill the King Achasverosh. Vayomer HaMelech, and the king said, Manasa Yakar Gedula LeMordechai Alzeh. What honor and what greatness was given to Mordechai on this account? Definitely, we have to honor Mordechai, give him greatness in order he should want to do such a thing again. What greatness was given to him? And the king's servants who minister before him told the king, nothing was done for him. Absolutely no reward was given to Mordechai. Says the Gemara, nothing has been done for him. Now, the servants of the king should have answered the king the way the king asked them. The king asked, what honor and glory was done to the king? So they answered, nothing was done for him. Should have said, no glory and honor was given to the king. But they answered, nothing was done for him. Why? Because they didn't really want Mordechai to get rewarded. Shimshi and even the other ones didn't want Mordechai to have any good coming to him. So they're trying to tell the king, nothing was done for him, but if you do anything, even something small, that's enough for Mordechai. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba says, Mordechai. They did not tell the king this because of the love for Mordechai. Ella mipnei shesoinim es Haman. Rather, because they hated Haman, they disliked Haman. You ever heard of the expression, my enemy's enemy is my friend?
Yep.
Right? It happened all the time, right? America enemy, right? The Soviets' enemy were the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, so they armed them, even though 20 years later it came back to harm them in 9/11. It's a famous saying, my enemy's enemy is my friend. World War II, America gave the Soviet Union tanks and mortars and everything, only for a couple of years later for them to go around and to start a Cold War. Right? So the servants of Achasverosh, his chamberlains, they weren't friendly they didn't want to see good from Mordechai, but rather they hated Haman so much, and therefore they wanted Haman to have a downfall, that his enemy should receive a big reward, just to sort of get Haman angry, get Haman upset.
Who were these enemies? Is it bigger in charge?
No, the enemies of Mordechai, of Haman. These are the chamberlains of the king, the king's servants who are attending to him at night.
Okay, the current servants.
Servants. The one
wants to try to kill him.
Right, the ones in his next to his bed reading him.
Okay, I don't understand that.
Do I have a picture? I don't have a drawing here of the king laying in bed and his servants are reading to him.
So his cabinet basically hated Haman.
Correct. Haman, he was a conniver. He got his way to become the second to the king and to become the ultimate power. He made everybody bow down to him. Nobody liked him. So therefore, that's why they told the king that Mordechai was not rewarded. He deserves a reward because they wanted just to get Haman more upset. The Sifsei Chacham adds on, they actually wanted to get Haman in trouble because remember what we said yesterday from Rabbi Soloveitchik? We said a few days ago, what Beria was to Stalin, Haman was to Achashverosh. He was his henchman. He was the head of the KGB, the GPU, NKVD, the one who was in charge of murdering and killing and arresting people. So Haman was at the head of his whole apparatus Achashverosh had of giving people the incentives in order to tattle on others. So if he sees that someone saved the king's life and Haman didn't reward him, Haman's not doing his duty. The king is going to get upset at Haman. What am I hiring you for? if you're not even doing your job.
But the last person who would want to reward would have been Mordechai.
Correct. So this is what Rava says, that it wasn't from the love of Mordechai they told this to the king, but rather it was from their hatred to Achasverosh. Also, when you don't like somebody, you try not mentioning their name. You have the story of Shaul. Shaul did not like David HaMelech, King David, and he invited him to a feast for Rosh Chodesh, and David HaMelech did not show up. He asked his son Yonasan, "Madua leiba ben Yishai al halechem?" Why did the son of Yishai not show up to eat bread with us? He disliked him so much he didn't want to say his name. He called him Ben Yishai, the son of Yishai. So the servants of Achasverosh, they say, "Lo nasa imoi davar." Nothing was done with him. They didn't even want to mention nothing was done with Mordechai. They didn't want to mention his name. So all they did is saying nothing was done with him, saying that he's not worthy and deserving of any greatness, of any honor and glory. And the Rosh Alkabetz and Manas HaLevi adds on that there's no need really to bring a proof from a pasuk, because this is the way of tzaddikim. That a tzaddik, by definition, the Roshayim hate him, just by definition, whether out of jealousy or something else. So the Rasha will hate a tzaddik, you don't have to have a proof from a pasuk. Continues the Gemara. Going back into let's go back into the Megillah. Vayomer hamelech mi v'chatzer. So suddenly the king hears a commotion. The king asks, "Who is in the courtyard?" Haman came l'chatzar beis hamelech hachitzona, to the outer courtyard of the king's house. Leimar lamelech, to petition the king. Lisles es Mordechai, to hang Mordechai. Ala eitz, on the gallows, asher heichin loy, which she prepared for him.
Mida connected Mida.
Am I still muted, Moshe? I don't think so. Moshe, could everyone hear me? You could hear me, no, Moshe? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So let's see, where did Haman come exactly? Let's go into here. You remember the layout of Achasverosh's palace. Let's go through here a little bit. There's a layout of Achasverosh's palace over here. Okay. Let's first get the layout of the palace. There it is. Okay. Let's get a different picture. Clear model of the palace. Anyways, okay, so let's go into here. Number 6 over here is a king's throne room. Outside of the king's throne room, number 1 is a great palace. We saw how great the huge gate of the king. Presumably, this is where Mordechai was sitting. There were multiple rooms coming off of it. It was something like 120 feet tall. It was grand. It was blue. There are 3 courtyards in Achasverosh's palace. Number 2 over here is where the feast took place. 3, 4, and 5. They progressively got smaller as you went into the king, and there were guards stationed by each one. This was the outer courtyard, number 3. So when the Megillah says Haman came to the outer courtyard, came to number 3. There was a middle courtyard, and then there was the inner courtyard, number 5, which is right opposite the throne, and the king could see right into the courtyard. That's where Esther came. So previously, we've seen pictures of this courtyard, number 5. The original tiles from the times of Esther are still there. Over here, number 3, this is where Haman came to. Haman came to the outer courtyard. When someone enters the royal compound and enters here, the guards have to, the guards have to announce him, make a ruckus. Usually during the night, they wouldn't let anybody in. But it's Haman, second to the king. It's beginning of the morning. And so what's happening? They announce him. So the king's asking, hey, what's going on over here? No one's supposed to be coming now. Who's there so early in the morning? So this is the outer courtyard. The Rebbe Rashab, when he would bring in France, in Menton on one Purim, and the Rebbe Rashab said the words of the Megillah, it says right over here in the words of the Megillah, Haman ba, Chatzar Beis HaMelech HaChitzoina. Haman came to the outer courtyard of the king's house. By Esther, it says, Esther came, Bachatzar Beis HaMelech HaPnimis. She came to the inner courtyard of the king's house. Haman, which is a Satan in the Sahara, when a Jew has an inner part of his heart and the outer part of his heart. The inner part of his heart, Haman can never arrive. Haman never came to the king's inner courtyard. Haman always stays on the outside because Sahara can only affect a Jew on the outside. If a Jew does something wrong, it's all on the outside. But the inside of a heart, the Chatzar Beis HaMelech HaPnimis, the inside can never be corrupted by Haman, and not just that, can never be corrupted by an anti-Semite or the world at large. So the Rebbe Rashab said. So where was Haman coming to? Let's go back to our pictures of Purim. That's Achasverosh on his throne. Yeah, here it is. And this picture over here. This is the outer courtyard. This is the place where the Megillah describes where Haman walked into. And over here, they dug it up because they wanted to see if there's any more layers underneath, from even earlier times than the Persians. Because they found there's remains going back, who knows how long, very far back. So this outer courtyard is about 210 feet by 180 feet long. On one of the walls of the courtyard, which was still around, they found this. What?
Approximately 70 yards.
64 meters by 55 meters. This is a design, a relief made out of stone, which they found on one of the walls over there. They took it apart. I mean, when the French were over there in Iran, French archaeologists, they're the first ones to really go through Achasverosh's palace, and they sort of ransacked the place, whatever they could, and now it's all displayed in the Louvre. So this is displayed in the Louvre today, what they took from the outer courtyard. So Haman would have been walking by this relief, this thing, on the way into Achasverosh's palace.
The room that looked actually a lot nicer than it does today.
Well, yeah, it was colored. It was bright colors. It was gold. It's in gold edging and sketching on it. I wouldn't have been surprised if they had any diamonds or something on it. But when Alexander the Great went and conquered Persia, he destroyed the whole palace. So I'm sure he stole any treasures or anything. If there was a diamond in the eye, I'm sure he stole it.
It's just like the Egyptian monuments now. It's going to see everything. You think it looks kind of dusty and stuff, but if you go back in the past, actually they say it's colored and really nice.
See, if you remember over here, this is the inner courtyard, much smaller. This is the one where Esther stood opposite the throne room. So there, the floor is still intact. They didn't dig up the floor. But over here, the outer courtyard, where Haman was, they dug up the floor trying to look for other things. So what's interesting, just where the Megillah connects a Russia to the outer courtyard, it's dug up. When the Megillah connects a Tzadekes to Esther, it's not dug up. So we'll continue with the Gemara. And it says that he came to the king in order to ask him to hang Mordechai ala eitz on the gallons asher heichin loy, that he had prepared for him. Why does it add on the word loy, for him? He prepared. The extra word loy for him is coming to teach you something. Heichin loy prepared for him. Says the Gemara, Tana was taught in the Brisa, loy heichin, on the gallows that Haman had prepared for himself. Haman, his sort of said prophecy about himself without realizing. He says, I'm going to hang Mordechai on the gallows I prepared for him. He actually, in effect, was really preparing a gallows that he himself should be hung on. And the Marsha adds on that from here we see that from the time the gallows were built, it was already decreed that Haman should be hung on it. Because already the king's sleep, Hashem's slumber, you could say, was awoken already. And the Medrash says that Haman wanted to make sure that the gallows was working properly. So he climbed up and he tried on the rope around his neck just to see that it works, and it worked. And he says he told his servants that it works perfectly. It says, and a heavenly voice came out and said, "It's perfect for you. Set aside for you perfectly these gallows." Now, there's the Belz Rav, the Sar Shalom of Belz. He has a very interesting explanation on this, so he starts off saying there's a mashal. In general, people dig, their own holes where they end up falling into. So there was one time there was a very wealthy person, say a king, and he hired a contractor to build for him many houses. He wanted to build a neighborhood, and he built for him many, many houses. And he worked for days and days and years, and he's building up house after house after house. In the beginning, he was all into it, and then he gets tired, he got burned out. And now, he eventually got, wanted to retire. So the king asked him, please do me one more favor. Build just one more house for me. He says, okay, fine. I'll build you one last house. And he goes ahead and he takes any leftover material laying around. He slaps together a house. He didn't make his inspections to make sure that the windows open properly, that the paint is finished, or that there's no lead or asbestos. And fine, he finished making the house. And the king said, thank you so much for all my years of work. I always paid you on time. I never paid you late. I wanted to give you a present. This last house that you built, I'm giving it to you as a present that you should keep. And he says, oy vey, had I known, I would have built a nice, beautiful mansion, a luxury house. Now I got to keep this excuse of a house.
I mean, violated actually the grand rule that you put all of your effort into every work project.
Mm-hmm. Right. So every single thing a person does, many times it could be traced back to them. Now, the Gemara in Mesechta Beitza says, it's a very long Gemara. It's all about Meichin mi Shabbos l'chol, preparing from Shabbos to the weekday, or Meichin mi Yom Tov l'Shabbos, preparing for Yom Tov for Shabbos. And it mainly speaks about an egg that was laid on Yom Tov. Could it be used? And Yom Tov, let's say, is Friday, one day, and Shabbos comes right after. If it was laid on Yom Tov, could you use it on Shabbos? But the term Meichin, right? The Hachana, Meichin Mishabbos Achal, the term Meichin, the Gemara interprets to mean, it doesn't just mean, it means prepare. A person has to prepare for a Shabbos meal. You're making a big meal, you're making, you prepare for a big Shabbos meal. You're going Sunday morning to the bagel store to buy a bagel and a coffee. You don't have to make major preparations. You don't have to spend a long time on it. You walk into a restaurant for a big meal, they have to prepare the meal. But eat cereal and milk in the morning, it doesn't take major achana. You don't have to think about it the day before. So Heichin means hachana lemitzvah, and you're preparing to do a mitzvah, like preparing to make a Shabbos meal. So Heichin Loi, Haman here was preparing for a big mitzvah. What mitzvah was he preparing for? To kill Haman. What bigger mitzvah could there be? To kill Haman, killing. Yeah. Right, but in truth, what he was doing was Heichin. He was doing hachana for a mitzvah, which was preparing to actually kill Haman himself.
As you say, that Haman was in the mitzvah of killing Haman.
Correct, killing Haman. So that's why he uses the term Heichin. Doesn't say asa that he made. Later before it says vayas ha'etz, and he made the tree. Here he says he prepared the gallows. What does it mean prepared? Meaning from the 6 days of creation, it's already prepared for him to be killed. Now imagine Haman did not build the gallows. Imagine first he went to Achasverosh, asking permission to kill Mordechai. Once the king gives permission, then Haman will go ahead and build a gallows then. So then this whole thing never would have taken place, that Haman should get hung on it, because Haman came to the king. He didn't have a chance to speak. Before he knew it, he was already leading around Mordechai on a horse around the city. He comes home before he has time to do anything. He's already rushed off to the feast with Haman and Achasverosh. And before you know what's going on, the king gets angry at Esther and Achasverosh. The king gets angry at Haman during the feast. And the king storms out, comes back in, and Charvaina tells him, hey, look, there's a gallows ready. There wouldn't have been any gallows ready for Haman.
We're giving the king a chance to come down, especially if he's so courageous.
Exactly. The king always changes his mind back and forth. Kill Vashti. The next morning, save Vashti. With the Jews, kill the Jews. A few days later, save the Jews. The king was very fickle, very, changed his mind very quickly. So if the king was angry at Haman for one moment, if he didn't kill him yet, then he wouldn't. Who says Haman ever would have gotten killed? Could be he would have changed his mind a little bit after, because Haman was zrizim akdim in the mitzvahs. He wanted to hurry up and to make sure everything's in place to hang Mordechai as soon as possible. So therefore, he built a tree at the first opportunity, and only after he built the gallows did he ask permission from the king in order to hang Mordechai. So now it was muchan, it was heichin. Everything was prepared for him. Everything was ready for Haman to be hanged. All the pieces were in place.
It's interesting that Haman actually was descended from Rabbi, because Haman was descended from Esav, whose father was Yitzchok, whose father was Rabbi. So here you have something good from his ancestor, the trait of, and others. Shem said that it should sacrifice actually Yitzchok, and so he was going to go through it. He gets up early in the morning. So you have a trait that Haman was using from his ancestor.
Interesting. Rabbi Yonasan Eibschitz actually says something interesting. If you look at the words of the Megillah, he says he asked the king to hang Mordechai on the gallows asher heichin lo he had prepared for him. Haman wasn't planning on stopping just by Mordechai. Haman's goal, he was eyeing, was a throne. His goal was asher heichin lo. He prepared the gallows for Achasverosh also. So when he says that he wanted to ask the king permission to hang Mordechai on the gallows, fine, that's Mordechai on the gallows. But then on which gallows? Asher heichin lo. On the gallows he prepared for the king Achasverosh. So he was actually having an eye ahead, and even though he's asking the king for permission to kill Mordechai, he's actually asking the king permission to start a series of executions till he eventually could kill the king himself. All right, we want to pause the Gemara here. And the next Gemara is the interesting Gemara. It's a long story of the back and forth, what happened with Haman and the king, and Haman and Achasverosh, and what happened with Haman while he's taking Mordechai around the city. So that will be Eretz Hashem. Well, let's discuss now. Everyone's here. Tomorrow is a fast day. What do you say about having a shiur tomorrow? Are people up to it? Take a day off? What's everyone's?
I'm happy to have the shiur.
Me too. I would also be.
I'm saying davening is longer also. But
Stay home.
you stay home tomorrow.
Yeah, because, I don't like to be out in the hot weather.
Yeah.
I can't drink, so. I could
So-
watch it on Zoom.
Should we just make a Zoom share tomorrow? Maybe we'll just do a Zoom share, class on Zoom tomorrow. So people don't have to come out, but we can still have a class
No.
if anyone wants to join.
Then
Right.
probably be minute from in the evening. So I'll go back to that.
Right, okay, and so I think tomorrow we'll have a Zoom class.
Mm.
So we'll just, so people don't have to come out. And you could just tune on Zoom if you're able to. Okay, so I think that's the conclusion. Shkoyach. Continue with Kuntres Umaayon. We'll see what it is.
What time can you eat in the morning? How does the fast start?
It's 4 something, 4:40, something like that. Very early in the morning.
It may not be able to fast. I wasn't feeling good. I don't know how much we eat today. And it's a bit of rabbanan.
Yeah.
So I may have to be eating anyhow tomorrow. So I could be a big shot.
Fast starts 4:08. 4:08 tomorrow morning.
Yeah, about 2:30 for the drinking.
Maamar Chavdaled up to Maamar 24.
And like I said, you feel good and eat actually, she's good today, that I know for sure if it's fast tomorrow.
Page 337. Anyone wants an English book? Page 337. There's a bookmark there. 4:04 a.m. Yes. It's medicine. Yeah, I think medicine has to be taken. We're going to bring a mashal, an example that the Baal Shem Tov, a story of the Baal Shem Tov brings down, and saying how everything we receive during the year, is dependent on how we acted the year before. And the fact that Hashem allows or makes things to become physical is only in kindness from Hashem. We just had in the Gemara from the Chaim Sofer that there's some tzaddikim, some righteous people, which are so holy, they have no connection to this physical world. The Mittel Rebbe, when he passed away, he was in the city of Hadich, traveling back to Lubavitch from his father's kever. He was in the city of Nezhin, that's where he passed away. And as you know, he was getting weaker and weaker, and he was like in a coma almost, like not answering and not responding. And the Chassidim who were standing around were trying to scream, Rebbe, come on, wake up, Rebbe, don't scare us like this. So the Mittel Rebbe opened up his eyes, and he says, I hear in Shemayim they're saying, what is such a holy neshama doing in such a lowly world? Right, so some things are too spiritual. I mean, the Mittel Rebbe, he was more spiritual and physical on a good day, but when the time that he came for him to pass away, so it was completely spiritual at that point, totally ruchni. So the fact that anything come down into physical from Atzilos, Bria, Tzira, Asiya, the fact that anything could become physical is in itself a very unique kindness that Hashem does to the world. So we'll read it inside. V'hinei, Ora Chesed v'Chayis v'Hashpa'a sheniksevay la'adam b'Rosh Hashanah. The kindness which Hashem allots or decides for the person on Rosh Hashanah, b'chol minei tov, all goodness, b'levani chayim mezayinai, in food and life and sustenance, Humeito Yisbarech. It comes completely from Hashem. V'hainu. The guf, the etzem, hashefa, humeatika kadisha. The goodness and kindness from Hashem comes even higher than the world of Atzilus, comes all the way up from Keser, and Keser itself from the higher part of Keser called Atik. That's where the source of goodness and kindness is. When Chassidim in all past generations used to write a pan, in a kvittel to the Rebbe, they would write two different versions. One is Ana L'Oyer V'Oyer, the first line, the heading. Please awaken Rachamim Rabim, abundant mercies. And they would write Mimakar HaRachamim, from the source of mercy. As it explains in the writings of the Mahariv. Not sure who that is, Rabbi Yosef or something. And or they write Mimakar Rachamim, from the source of mercies. And the Rebbe said that Chassidim used to write that pan. Remember, my grandfather would write a pan the way he was taught to do it as a child in Russia, right? He write to Mimakar Rachamim, please awaken mercy from the source of mercy. As written in the responses of the Mahariv. Mimakar Rachamim, the source of mercy, many times is going on Atik, where the source of all goodness is. Now, the Rebbe says that Chassidim should not write that anymore. He should just write, please awaken abundant mercies for me. Because why should we give the Rebbe an address? Where to take it from? It's possible to receive blessings from sources much higher than that, higher than Atik, higher than the source of mercy, higher than Keser. So who are we to give an address, Rabbi, please awaken from me mercy from there? And maybe I'm saying that's exactly why it changed in our generation, when we're starting the generation of Mashiach. So we're reaching far beyond whatever has been reached in previous generations. So what a Jew receives, the goodness, it comes from Atik. It comes from the source of abundant mercies of Keser, higher than the world of Atzilus. And how does it come down? It comes through the 10 Sfiras of the world of Atzilus, all the 10 different levels of Atzilus, Chacham, Bina, Das, Isai, down to Malchus. And it comes through there. L'shama gas avoided neshamas Yisrael b'Torah of mitzvahs. When a Jew learns Torah, when a Jew does a mitzvah, so then they bring down blessings and awakening kindness in the world of Atzilus, and in turn, that brings down blessings from higher than the world of Atzilus. So this is all in the world of Atzilus, and you're receiving from Keser above the world of Atzilus. Dihine. Ha'or v'shefa sheniktav loy la'adam b'Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim. When a person is granted on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur a certain amount of kindness and what they will receive from Hashem, v'nechtam Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur it's sealed. U'lefi avaydasai b'Torah mitzvahs b'Shana ha'avra. So it depends on a person's actions and how he served Hashem, how much Torah he learned the past year, how many mitzvahs he did the past year. When Shekasav, as it is written, it is a decree for Yisrael, a judgment for the Hashem, for the God of Jacob. Yaakov, the name Yaakov is a lower name than Yisrael. Yaakov has a word in Akev, which means a heel. Yisrael has a word Rosh, which means head. So the name of Yisrael is a much higher level name than name Yaakov. And it says, Ki choik Yisrael hu, it is a judgment for Yisrael. It is a statute for Yisrael. Mishpat, a judgment to the Yaakov, the God of Jacob. Judgment is on what happened in the past. You can't be judged on what you're going to do in the future, right? The angels wanted to kill Yishmael in the desert, and because in the future his descendants will be persecuting the Jews. And Hashem said, no, because we can't judge based on the future. So Yisrael, Mishpat, a judgment is for the past. That has to do with the name Yaakov. Yaakov is whatever was done in the past, the hill on the bottom. The judgment is for what happened the past year. Choik means a statute, but choik also means an amount. Nasnu chuka me'es HaMelech. It says that certain people ate by the table of David HaMelech, of King David and Shlomo HaMelech, and their portion was given to them from the king's table. It uses a term, choik. Choik means an amount. So the amount, choik hu Yisrael, from the level of Yisrael, which is Rosh, the higher level, then you have a choik, an amount to be given for the next year. What is a mishpat? What is it judged based on? Lelekei Yaakov, what were your deeds the past year? Whatever you did the past year is based on that is what you will be judged, how much kindness you will receive the next year. Upirushay. And the judgment is Kifi Kiachoik HaNiksav L'Yisrael B'Rosh Hashanah V'Yom Kippurim Tali B'Mishpat. The decree determined for Israel on Rosh Hashanah depends on a judgment. Mishpat Bazeh Kama Or V'Gila Lekus Shezeu Inyan Yaakov Himshech B'Shana Ha'avra. And the judgment evaluates what did you do this past year to bring godliness down and to reveal Hashem. How do you reveal Hashem and bring godliness? Through learning Torah and doing mitzvahs with kavanah. So based on your actions of the past year and how you acted and how much you learned in Torah and mitzvahs, so that's what Hashem will decide how much kindness and goodness you'll receive for the next year. So that is the first thing a person is judged on. Let's say last year it wasn't the greatest year, and I messed up. I did some things I wasn't supposed to do. Could I still get a good judgment for the coming year? Yes. How? By doing Shuvah. So now we're going to discuss a little bit how Shuvah could help a person to receive a good judgment and a good budget for the next year, even if they weren't so properly deserving in the past year. And in the month of Elul, it's a time to do Teshuvah. The month of Elul is called the month of mercy, where Hashem will forgive the Jews. Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai on Rosh Chodesh Elul, on the first day of Elul, and that's when Hashem forgave the Jews for the sin of the Chet HaEgel, of the golden calf. He went up on Rosh Chodesh Elul, and he came down on Yom Kippur. Very good. It came down on Yom Kippur. So the month of Elul is a time of Teshuvah. And it is a very opportune time when a person can do Teshuvah. It says there were 3 times Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain for 40 days. First time was when he went up on Shavuos to receive the Torah, or the day after Shavuos, rather, to receive the Torah. He came down and he saw the golden calf. He broke the luchos, he broke the tablets. He went back up to Har Sinai, up the mountain, for another 40 days and 40 nights, starting from tomorrow. Shiva Asar B'Tammuz is when he came down the mountain, broke the luchos. We learned in the end of the Mesechta Tiferes. Yud Ches Tammuz, he went back up the mountain, and he came down on a Chaf Tes on the last day of Av. And there he was begging Hashem to forgive the Jews. And then he went up, he came back down, and when the Jews saw them, he told them to do that. If you do Teshuvah, Hashem will forgive you. And then he went back up the mountain the 3rd time to receive the second luchos. And he went back up on Rosh Chodesh Elul, came back down on Yom Kippur with a second luchos. And the next day he told them on Yud Aleph about to build the Mishkan. The first time Moshe Rabbeinu went up the mountain, the Jews were in a state of being tzaddikim, holy, righteous people. They were just after Tiferes HaOmer. They refined and elevated every emotional, every attribute inside of them. They just saw Hashem himself by Har Sinai, by the giving of the Torah. They were tzaddikim, righteous people. When Moshe Rabbeinu came down and they served the idols, so then the Jews were on the level of Rishayim, evildoers, because they just served the idol, the golden calf. He went up for 40 days, and when he came down, the third time he went up the mountain, the Jews did teshuvah in the month of Elul, and therefore they were on the level of Baalei Teshuvah. Baal Teshuvah, which is even higher and greater than a tzaddik. It says when Moshe Rabbeinu was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, he did not eat any food or drink any drinks. How is that possible for a person not to have to eat or drink for 40 days and nights? So there's three different pirushim, three explanations on that, brought from the Midrashim, Rishonim. One is that Moshe Rabbeinu, he ate, but he ate not physical food, he ate spiritual food, because he was elevated. He ate like the angels ate. He ate from the Gilei HaShechina, the revelation of the Shechina. So he didn't need physical food, rather he needed Gilui Kus, godly light. If you try feeding a person gasoline, is he going to live? No,
I don't think so.
But a car is good for a car, right? So a person needs food to eat. Moshe Rabbeinu is like a malach, an angel, and he needs Gilui Kus, the revelation of godliness. Some say he was elevated to the level, times of Geula, where there's no food, no drink, there's no necessity for food or drink. And the third opinion says it was actually more of a natural thing. You ever get so involved in something, you're reading a good novel or reading a good book, and you don't feel time passing by. Turn around, 3 hours passed. You're in a good conversation with somebody, and get so engrossed in it. I remember somebody said when I was in Venice, they were watching a fireworks show, and they stood in line. And they're waiting they were standing for 6 hours. And they didn't even realize till after the show that suddenly it hit them like a wave how tired they were after the fireworks show was over. But they were standing for 6 hours, they didn't notice. So when you're really involved in something, you go to an amusement park, you're having fun the whole day, you don't feel the need to sleep, you don't feel the need to eat, to drink. So in a similar sense, Moshe Rabbeinu, being in Shemayim in heaven, he was so engrossed, obviously, and involved in receiving the Torah from Hashem, hearing from Hashem, that there was no need for him to eat or drink. It's like the most exciting film you ever watched, times a million. Moshe Rabbeinu is learning Torah from Hashem. And so therefore, there was no need for him to eat or drink. And all three of these explanations correspond to another 3 times he was on the mountain. The first time he's on the mountain, the Jews were tzaddikim, righteous people, holy people, meaning they're above anything to do with sins, averas, the grind of the world, the nitty-gritty. No death was among them the entire time of the first time. So it has to do, the Moshe Rabbeinu was above the idea of food and drink. He was like a supernal being, times of Mashiach, ein bo yachila shliya. So then he was supernatural entirely. The second time when the Jews sinned, of course, whatever you do has an effect on the leader, on the Nasi. So the Jews were sinning. It brought down Moshe Rabbeinu's level as well. Hashem told him, Lech reid, go down. I only made you have greatness because of the Jews. The Jews went down. You're going to go down as well. So Moshe Rabbeinu now is sort of vulnerable, you could say. He's like a natural person again. So the fact that he didn't eat or drink on the second 40 days in the mountains, when the Jews are in a state of being a Russia, of being evildoers, is a natural explanation. That he was so involved and engrossed in what's happening in Shemayim, in heaven, that nothing was just, that he didn't feel a need to eat or to drink. Sort of like the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov said that nowadays one should not fast anymore. He said he should give tzedakah. As Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, we learned this quite recently in Tanya, and Chitas, there's different fasts that you have for different sins. You shouldn't fast anymore because now we're not able to. Our bodies are not as strong. We used to be able to fast and still learn Torah the whole day. Now we don't have that ability. So better to learn Torah the whole day and do extra mitzvahs and give money to tzedakah.
If people want to, I don't know, maybe let back still do it. I'm fasting on the day of a yard site.
Fine, right? So these are unique times.
I don't. I don't do that. So I give,
Correct. Give tzedakah.
Exactly. You give tzedakah. Give actually
Right.
stuff for people to eat.
Most people don't fast nowadays. It's just unique exceptions, or Chaver Kadisha, or sometimes unique exceptions, where the Rabbanim will make a half-day fast for everyone, or full-day fast, but till night. Now you can ask me, the Baal Shem Tov himself says he would fast from one Shabbos to the next Shabbos, the whole week long. How is that possible? It says so the Baal Shem Tov didn't set out in mind having to fast. It says when he was still a hidden mystic, he would go out to the mountains, to the forest, and he would pack a knapsack full of bread and water to last him for the week. And he would be miyachid, he would learn and miyachid yichudim, meditate in the different in Hashem's name. And walking back on Friday, he noticed his knapsack was heavier than it was meant to be. He opens it up. He saw all the water and all the bread was still inside. Why? Because he just didn't eat. He was so engrossed in all of his yichudim that he forgot that he's supposed to eat and to drink. So that type of fasting you're allowed to do nowadays as well. But the fasting, to go ahead and fast, is what we're not supposed to do. So Moshe Rabbeinu was so engrossed in learning Torah from Hashem that he wouldn't eat or drink. A second 40 days. The third 40 days, the Jews are on a level of Bali Tshuva. And this is the month of Elul, is a time for Tshuva because of this. Time of the 13 Midas Rachamim. So there are somebody who was once a sinner, but now they did Tshuva and they turned to Hashem. And they have an advantage that they tasted sin, but now they came to Hashem. So here we say Moshe Rabbeinu was like the angels, whereas food was spiritual food. The food was Dvar Hashem, the words and the sparks of Hashem, mitzvahs that we do. Then he had the food, true needed food, but he needed spiritual food, not physical food. And that was where the third, instead of 30 days, time of Teshuvah on the mountain. So, Yeshar Koyach.